Good evening. Good evening. We will be conducting tonight's meeting via Zoom as well as here in City Council chambers at City Hall. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting on Wave Channel 18. If you would like to make a public comment, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Pastor Tom Galovich from Valley View Church will be giving the invocation this evening, and the mayor will begin the meeting immediately after the invocation. Pastor, if you'd like to come up to the podium.
Thank you very much. In 1 Timothy 2:1-3, it says, I urge then, first of all, that all petitions, prayers, intercession, thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and those in authority, and that we may live peacefully and quiet lives in all our godliness and holiness. This is good and pleases God our Savior. Let's do that. Would you bow your heads with me? First of all, Father, we thank you for our great nation and this wonderful city of Lincoln. We thank you for those who you have placed in authority over us, especially our chief, over our police and fire departments. We ask for protection on all of our first responders, from dispatch down to our officers on the street and all of our fire personnel. We thank you for our elected officials of this city council and all their support staff that keep our city functioning and thriving. Now we ask for wisdom for our city council, that they may make decisions that help our city and its residents and businesses. Thank you, God, for the prosperity that we enjoy. Thank you for the protection that you have afforded us. We also pray for our country, that there may be peace in our land. Let division, hatred, strife be replaced with love for one another. Harmony that does not mean that we're all the same, but even with our differences, we can work together to produce a beautiful symphony of efforts. Let us follow the two greatest commandments found in God's word, which says, love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and then love your neighbor as yourself. This we humbly ask. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I love the shirt. My first car was a 73 Mach 1, so seeing one right up front is nice. Gwen, roll call, please.
Yes. Councilmember Andriotta.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Here.
And Mayor Joyner.
Suppose I should have officially called the meeting to order first. Before I did that, we'll go ahead and move on to reports from closed session. We had no closed session this evening and therefore nothing to report. Pastor, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that as well. We move on to agenda modifications. Any member of the council seeking a modification of the agenda tonight?
No, sir.
Any member of staff? Seeing none, our agenda is good. We'll move on to presentations. We have one tonight. There are very few times in this job when you get to do something fun and meaningful to the community. And tonight, this council has the honor of recognizing Suzanne Spanigel's 100th birthday. So I'm going to go ahead, yes, indeed. I'm going to go ahead and read this proclamation, and then I'm promised that Peggy will get Suzanne to the microphone for a word or two. We'll take a vote on the proclamation in between and maybe get some pictures along the way as well. So proclamation number 2023-04, a proclamation from the City of Lincoln City Council recognizing Suzanne Spanigel's 100th birthday. Whereas Suzanne was born June 22nd, 1923 in Harvey, Illinois, to George Drummond Wilson. My grandmother was a Wilson. I wonder if we're cousins. And Annie Inglis Wilson, who immigrated from Glasgow, Scotland to New York in 1923. And after 2 weeks in America, they left for Harvey, Illinois, where Suzanne grew up and attended Whittier School until the completion of the 8th grade. And whereas Susan moved with her family to Pacific Grove, California, and attended Pacific Grove High School, graduating in 1941 at the age of 18, at which time she moved with her parents to South San Francisco. And whereas while working at the post office, she met her handsome sailor named Robert. And after dating for a short while, they married in South San Francisco on April 8th, 1944. And soon after their marriage, Bob received orders and shipped out to Ford Island at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, where he worked as an aviation machinist mate. And the reason I'm smiling is that my grandfather who married the Wilson was an aviation machinist. So there may be some parallels here. Aviation machinist mate on airplanes for the war while Susan continued to work at the post office in South San Francisco. And whereas Bob returned from the service in 1945, and the couple continued to live in South San Francisco, having their first child, David Wilson Spanigle, on July 22nd, 1946. And in 1950, Susan, Bob, and David, along with Susan's mother, Annie, moved to Concord, California, where Bob worked at the Pacific Gas and Electric Power Station in Pittsburgh, California. And whereas in 1953, their second child, Peggy, was born, and during her children's school year, Susan was very active and president of the Parent Teachers Association, as well as becoming the secretary of the Clayton Valley Presbyterian Church. And whereas in 1964, the family moved to Clayton, California. There's a spot on the map right outside of Lincoln over by the gun range that is called Clayton, California as well. There's nothing there right now, but Clayton, California is there. Where Susan went to work for the Contra Costa County Farm Bureau, ultimately becoming the Bureau Secretary, where she continued to work until her retirement in 1995 at the age of 72. And whereas Bob passed away suddenly in 1976, and after retiring, Susan moved to Grass Valley and became active in the Elks Lodge and the Sierra Presbyterian Church. But at the age of 85, Susan moved to Del Webb's Sun City, Lincoln Hills, to be closer to her son and daughter. And whereas after living in Lincoln for 15 years, Susan moved to Rockland and is now doing well, living near her family, the family of her daughter and son-in-law, 4 grandsons, and 9 great-grandchildren. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City of Lincoln City Council do hereby recognize and take official note of the joyous occasion of Mrs. Spanigle's 100th birthday. Can I get a motion and a second?
I heartily move to approve this motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You wouldn't dare. All right. Peggy, if you could bring Susan up. Or I can come to you. What do you like? Very great honor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the honor of being honored by Lincoln. I've enjoyed my stay here for 13 years over at Lincoln Hills, and now I've moved. It's very nice to meet all of you, and it's been a pleasure to become very acquainted with a lot of people here because of Peggy and her business with the theater. I'm glad, I'll be glad to stay as long as I can. And then I appreciate all your kindness and wish you all very, very well, and may God bless you all.
Thank you so much. Even though you've moved to Rockland, you'll always be a Lincolnite for us. You want to get a picture? Sure.
It might be easier here.
Well, give him his own. You know what it feels like to have paparazzi. Yep. It was fun. All right, we move on to public comment on non-agendized items. This is an opportunity for members of the public who wish to speak on an item not on our agenda tonight to do so, keeping in mind that because it is not an agendized item, the council itself cannot speak to any of those topics. We can direct staff if it's appropriate to do so to briefly address those issues. I have two cards right now. Darla Gutierrez. Hi.
I received your little notice about the water increase and all that. And I have some questions. I pretty much was born here. I've been here. I live in the real Lincoln, if you want to call it. I live in my parents' house now. It's a 1 bath. It's nothing big, something small. It's 2 lots, but I don't water everything. Yet I pay, and even though it's nobody's business, but I pay $56 average, sometimes more, because as the summers go on, because of my fruit trees that my parents left me. My daughter lives in Roseville. She has over a 4,000 square feet home, pool, has fruit trees and things like that. And she pays $58 a month. She has 5 bathrooms. That means 5 toilets. It's 5 kids, and I live alone. They pay $1, I believe it's $1.45 or $1.45 when it's over their limit. We pay $2.37. Yet you guys still want to increase the water, the sewer, and the garbage. I do 1 bag a week. And I'm already paying $26 for that 1 bag. And you guys want to increase it again. Now, we're not going to have money for the police officers, and we're not going to have money for the fire department. Where is the money going? Because it seems like you guys make $10 and you spend 20. We don't have a mall. We don't have like a water park, you know, where the kids can go play. We only have 1 park where kids can go to do the skateboarding. The kids try to find somewhere else to do skateboarding. What do we have that you're comparing us to Roseville, to Woodland? Why is it that when you guys did this survey saying which counties or towns or whatever were what they were paying, why wasn't it all together? 1 town, all their prices. 1 town, all their prices compared to us. You picked and choose what you guys wanted. And I'm not saying specifically you, whoever set this up. I can't even get a light on corner at 3rd and Elm, all the traffic that comes from Jonah. Yet we have a light at McBean that you can't see because of all the trees. My understanding, you have a person who's supposed to go around and see where the stop lights and the lights and things like that everybody can see them, but I haven't seen any results. R Street, O Street, I can go on. I live in the real Lincoln where I can see everything. The roads are bad, yet we don't have any money for the roads. So where is the money going?
Thank you, Darla.
Thank you.
Folks, I'm going to ask you from here on out not to applaud or to boo. So somebody who might have a different opinion than you might feel intimidated and may not feel as though they can get up and speak. If you do so, I appreciate the sentiment. But sir, please. What we'll do, I think, is go ahead and go through the cards, go through the speakers. Staff will take notes, and then I'll have staff address the questions at the end. And again, because this is not an agendized item, council can't really speak to that. Staff can be directed to speak to it briefly. So the next card I have is Pete Giorgiano.
Actually, I feel a lot better today. Ben got a hold of me and stuff and we talked. And what we're trying to do here in Lincoln, like I said, I'm an old-time resident. And for the longest time, this was an affordable town for the people that lived here. Your dad made it an affordable town for a lot of people that live here. I was going to tell you, I told you that he asked me to run for council and my brother. Your dad came to town and he built a bunch of houses that were affordable houses for people. And people were put into a house. And it seems like it went from being that town to being a town that just can't satisfy its hunger for more and more and more money. Now, I wouldn't be here complaining if this was the first time we were going to get a water and sewer hike. But if you know the history of Lincoln, you'll know that Lincoln has always balanced its budget on the water and sewer. And, you know, back then, I remember I built a couple of duplexes on 7th and East Street. The hookups for those duplexes were $1,300. That was the water, the sewer, the fees, the school, everything, right? And at that time, the city actually had people that would hook up your water and sewer. I don't know what they are right now, but I know that there are a lot. And I know that America has changed. It's changed from a country where people came from all over the world. I remember seeing the Statue of Liberty as a 9-year-old boy, and everybody, we were at the bottom of the boat. And the Andrea Doria, actually it sunk the following trip. It went to Italy and came back and it sunk in the port there. But everybody was crying and waving and hollering and screaming. And as a young boy, even at that time, I realized that I had come and I was going to be part of something great. My dad had been here 2 years. He got about almost 2 years prior to us, had a house on East Street, right in the center of the block there, that he had put a down payment on and had remodeled, and we moved into this house. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe he was the governor or the president or something when I walked into that house. I mean, we had a refrigerator. We had a stove. We had hot and cold water. We had a bathroom that you could flush and a shower where you could take a shower and a bath. And he worked at the pottery. He remodeled that house in about 6-7 months from the time we got here to the time that the person that bought it from him came back and wanted to buy it.
You know, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up your comments. The 3 minutes is.
All right, well,
expired.
you know, my 3 minutes, does anybody out there give me 3 minutes?
No, Pete, that's not the way,
Well,
no. That's
We'll
not
go
the way
ahead and-
this works.
We'll go ahead and write more up. I
That-
just want,
Pete, I'm sorry, that's not the way it works. If you want to wrap up your comments, that's fine,
okay.
but you're not going to get
I want
3
to wrap
minutes
up
from
my
each member.
comments.
Okay.
In other words, people grew up here, people lived here, and it was affordable. Kids were able to graduate from school and afford to buy a house here. They didn't have to move out of town. Today, we're being taxed to death. And every time you guys get in trouble, you raise the water and sewer. So I'm here to let you know, if we can't get something worked out, I'm gonna go ahead and pay for polls, pay for people to stand in front of the stores. I'll spend $10,000, $15,000, whatever, and find out what people want. And we're gonna get the town back that I grew up in.
All right, Pete. Thank you. Folks, please. Anyone else wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda tonight? Byron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, the abundance of people here. I wish we could have this every meeting that we come to. I'm glad they're here. Summertime now, school's out, and what I'm going to talk about, I've noticed over the last year or two, and I guess being school's out now, I see a lot more of it. I'm talking basically public safety. We now have bicycles with motors. I don't even know what to call it. I don't know if it's,
Electric bikes, e-bikes.
it's got a motor on it. And of course, in my day, when I was able to do so, I rode a bike to ride the bike, not to ride. And don't get me wrong, I coasted every time I could, but nonetheless, I rode it. Also, the T-handle scooters that we have, they too now are motorized. I do live in a world where I volunteer. I see a lot of people like myself who unfortunately, for whatever reasons, have succumbed to accidents that dealt specifically with bicycles, scooters. And that's why I think our society went along with, you know what, we do need to wear helmets. Three individuals that I know that did have helmets on, they did have serious accidents. It wasn't their fault. And yet it was a long road for them to get back to not even where they were. And there are two scenarios where the people didn't make it at all. So my point is, I don't know how we get to the point where we can get the kids to keep the helmet on, number one. And number two, I'm not quite sure how to handle it, because what I've seen since school has been out is if people are coming up to a four-way, whatever, and the light's red for whatever, and they look both ways, thank goodness, and zip on down the road. And I'd love to say that this only happens once in a while, but it happens all the time. And so whatever we can do in order to curtail that, it only takes one time. We have the unbelievable pleasure of having someone here that hit 100 years old. And hopefully by doing this, we'll have others that will at least attempt that goal. So for what it's worth, I think we need to maybe take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. Anyone else in the chambers wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda tonight?
My name's Louis Ortiz. I'm here for the water rates. Anyway, your water rates are proposed water rates. Meter size, 3/4 change from what it is now in 5 years, it will be 81% higher. On an 8-inch pipe, the water rates will only go up 24%. The other thing is the maintenance on the meters. Right now, it's 81 cents. In 5 years, it will be 2,000% higher on that. So trying to, balance a budget on the residents of Lincoln is crazy. And the other thing, if you really want to balance a budget, I would like everyone in the city council to be at McBean Park every morning and watch the logging trucks and all the cars blowing down a 30-mile-per-hour road from Ferrari to Lincoln Boulevard. Those trucks, I almost got nailed. I almost got nailed the other day. I was walking across with my dog. A guy was going probably 80 miles an hour and he almost got me. He almost got me. So at 30 miles an hour, that is not being taken care of. I've even seen officers going faster than that, and they weren't going anyplace except behind somebody who was going fast. So if that can be taken care of, Lincoln will be able to balance their budget on 193, and the other street is D Street, from First to 193, right there. Because these cars and trucks are blowing through. A friend of mine, volunteer fireman, he almost got nailed the other day by a logging truck. So these logging trucks are blowing through Lincoln and other businesses. So if that can be taken care of, it would be very much appreciated. Because if one of those cars or trucks careens into the park when there's things going on, Lincoln will be in a big lawsuit. Because they blow, like I said, from First Street to 193, Little League, that's a 25 mile an hour area, and they are blowing through there. And Fifth Street too. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Folks, please. Louis, I think we've all had our experiences with the logging trucks over the years. Chief heard you loud and clear. We've got a dedicated traffic officer now that can be routed over to those areas and be very aggressive.
He is there tomorrow morning. I'll be every morning.
Chief?
That is every morning,
I hear you.
and at night too. I don't even cross the road at night, walk my dog. If I'm afraid I'm gonna get clipped.
Louis, thank you. Anyone else in chambers wishing to speak on an item not on our agenda tonight? Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. So my family moved here 20 years ago. So I'm not a newbie, but certainly not a lifer. 20 years ago, Lincoln was much smaller than it is today. And that was the appeal. We love the small town. But over the course of time, Lincoln has really opened their arms to growth, residential growth. Every builder on the map has come to town, especially in the past 4 years. That's a tremendous amount of growth. Tremendous amount of fees have been paid for those permits, for the infrastructure. The city has spent all that money, hopefully wisely, but it's clearly gone. With that growth of homes, which is fantastic, that's what this town is about. There's been zero growth or very little of noticeable growth in business. And I feel that with these water and sewer fee increases, you're burdening the residences without bringing in businesses that can contribute to that burden. This town needs more services. I understand that takes away from the small town feel that Lincoln has been known as, but the town has gone away from that. It's no longer a small town. The town has opened their arms to development without looking at growth in businesses. So I feel that the city is missing that tax revenue and instead going after the residences for that tax. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else in chambers wishing to speak on an item not on our agenda tonight? Yes, sir.
Hi, Roy Kennedy. I've lived here about 44 years. I worked for the city of Lincoln out at the airport. I knew your dad out there. I live on a court in one of your dad's homes. And a couple of years ago, I saw like the the crew from the city come out and do some crack sealing. They didn't hit my court, but our court, I can't even walk across the street. I mean, if you're barefooted, it's like those are all rock now. There's no asphalt there at all. I was wondering, do you guys have a program to go around and hit the older parts of the city? Not just the fairways like Fifth Street or Fourth or First Street. There's never been any kind of anything fixed. I know that we had some flooding problems, but they fixed that at one time. I had water coming almost in my garage, and actually my neighbor got his canoe out and he was canoeing in our court. Even in the last one we had, the big rain, it came up my driveway pretty good, but I just figured, hey, it's going to go down. You guys, for some reason, there was at the end of the court, there was a drain, but there was also a bigger drain underneath. So they got into the older pipe that was underneath going out towards towards the park. Yeah. So that's, but I'm not here for that. I'm actually here for my court. I'm surprised that the city didn't have a program to come in there and not just crack seal, but put a seal down on what's there. Nothing's been done in 43 years. So I think that's all I have to say. I also am protesting the rate increases too. Because being a senior citizen now, almost 70 years old, I can't believe it.
I'm right behind you.
Yeah. But I count my pennies now, so we can do some fun things at our retirement age here. And that's about it. Thank you for my.
Thank you. Anyone else in chambers? Pete?
Yeah,
You already spoke.
I want to speak of businesses since he mentioned getting business.
So this is not a conversation, and you've got 3 minutes. You've had your 3 minutes on this
So
topic.
you can only talk on one subject.
You had your 3 minutes, yes. We can't just have you go sit down, come back up, talk on another subject, go back, sit back down. come
Well, I
up
was
on
the
another
third
topic.
largest tax provider for Lincoln. I was going to build a 140,000 square foot shop at the airport. They told me I couldn't build a metal building because it would be an eyesore. It's hard to attract people over here if you want it to
Who
look
told you
like
that?
Taj Mahal.
Who told you that and when? Because we're very much looking for people to build metal buildings at the airport.
It's ask the old city council and ask the people. So that was it. I'm just saying.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate that.
They ran me out of town.
Well, we'd welcome you now, Pete.
Well, they wanted me back as soon as I moved.
When, anyone online? All right. So Nita, I think I'm going to have you, if you're ready to, yeah, you got a lot of notes, and then Matthew, I'm going to turn to you on that cul-de-sac and your CIP programs.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to try to address as many of the questions as I have, starting from the top, regarding why different cities were selected for the different utility and the rate study. Not all cities are full service cities. The city of Lincoln is full service. We provide water, wastewater, and refuse, but not all cities do that. So for example, Rockland outsources their garbage, and so we can't use them as a comparison for our garbage rate. So that's why you see the different cities for the different rates. But at the very end of that flyer, you'll see that two of the other cities do provide all of the services. And so those rates are provided at the very end of the flyer. And then as far as balancing the budget on the utilities, so the utility funds are enterprise funds, and enterprise funds have to carry their own costs. They have to take in enough revenues to cover their expenditures. And that's the purpose of these rate increases. It's not to make us comparable with our neighbors. It's not to pad the budget or to fund another program. It's merely to cover the costs that haven't been covered in years past. It is very unfortunate that incremental rate increases have not occurred over past years, but they haven't. And so we find ourselves in this position of needing these large increases to ensure these funds don't go bankrupt in the next 12 to 16 months. That's what we're looking at without rate increases, is the bankrupt of these funds, the inability to pay for these essential services. We're not talking the nice to haves, we're talking the need to haves. So because of that, because these funds have to stand on their own, the only other option is to have the general fund support them. And that is a policy decision that this council could make, that we could impose rates that are lower than the increases that are currently out there. But that would mean taking money from the general fund. The general fund supports primarily public safety, fire and police. So if we think there's a problem with not having enough law enforcement to stop speeding trucks now, then should the general fund need to support these utility funds, the ability to do that will just go away. Of course, we would take money from programs that aren't public safety first, like rec and the library, but those funds are not the majority of the general fund. It is police and fire. There was a question about connection fees. Connection fees are used for future development. As several community members pointed out, connection fees are paid when someone pulls a permit. They're paying that fee for their new entrance into their city, their new development, their new home in the city. And so that fee does go toward the infrastructure of that new connection. Those connection fees can't be used to pay for the general operating expenses of water, sewer, and garbage. They can only be used for that expansion, for that new home. We can't ask the future ratepayers to subsidize the current rates. It's not lawful, it's not legal.
Hold on, folks, please.
So let's see. And then I think there was that question about public safety. And did I miss any of the rate questions that you saw in your notes? Okay. There was a question about public safety and the helmets, which I think I would pass off to Chief to address. And,
And she's
oh,
just done that, it looks like. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Matt.
yeah, if you want to address that, and then I'll keep going down my list. I've got a couple more on rates, but go ahead, please, Chief.
Yep, notes were taken on that and that's going to be passed on to my staff.
Okay, thank you so much. And then there was the pointing out that the 3/4 inch meter rate is going to be 84% higher, while the larger meters are not increasing as much. I would say that's a function of the initial or the current rate for those items. So the current rate for the 3/4 inch meter is, pardon me. My computer's just decided to be very slow. So 3/4 inch meter is $16, while the 8-inch meter is $1,500. Additionally, there are fewer 8-inch meters in the system. There are much more 3/4 inch meters. In fact, that is the majority of our connections in the water system. The majority is residents, as someone pointed out, that there are more residents than there are businesses, which you would expect in any city. So as a result, those revenues, they're proportional, right? We're not asking for residents to pay more so that the larger meters can pay less, but everyone has to pay their fair share. And because there's more 3/4 inch meters, that proportionality is based on those number of meters. Someone asked again about the fees for infrastructure. So just again, to make it very clear, the fees and the connection fees have to be used for infrastructure only. They can't be used to support or shore up the rates. They can only be used for the future. Someone mentioned that the city doesn't have enough business growth, and I would say I agree that the city does not currently have enough businesses, and that we have been actively seeking additional businesses. And we are in the process of updating our downtown plan, which we hope will help us attract more businesses. Did you have something you want to?
I just wanted to clarify real quickly that when we say the rates collected have to be used for infrastructure, it is that designated infrastructure.
Right.
We, in other words, cannot take sewer connection charges or water connection charges and fix roads and streets. Those are two very different pots of money, and Proposition 218 is very clear on what we can use those funds for with respect to our enterprise funds.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes. Again,
Christine, when did Prop 218 come into place? Because I think some folks are relating back to pre-Prop 218 and things that happened then as opposed to now.
If I recall correctly, it was around 2016, 17. I don't remember off the top of.
It was farther
No,
back
it was
than
older
that.
than,
Was
the
it?
Prop 218 was back in the 90s, not when our rates. back when-
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So late 90s though.
Yeah, I think you're right. 96.
Right. And then it was subject to a lot of litigation, and before it actually went into place, I think it was. Correct. Sorry about that.
No, it's
Yes, and we've tried to make it very clear in public meetings that these enterprise funds, they have to stand on their own, that the rates that we're asking for are merely to cover the cost of operations, that these rates haven't been increased in many, many years, unfortunately. And so we are now stuck between a rock and a hard place. And we understand that this is distasteful, that this is unfortunate, that this is uncomfortable, and that this is not a liked proposition. Sean and I don't like having to bring this proposition forward. But we would not be doing our due diligence to this community and to this city if we continue to kick this down the road and not raise these rates. Because as I said, we've reached a point where these funds have been operating in a deficit status. That means more expenses than revenues. Several people have said, I think one person said, we get $10 in and we spend $20. That's exactly correct. We've been expending more than we have revenues in, but the only way to bring revenues in for these funds is to raise the rates. That streets money can't be used to cover these rates. This money, the rates money, can't be used to pay for streets. They all are in their separate buckets. They can't be commingled or used for different purposes. So that's why we're in the position that we're in of asking for these large increases. And the alternatives, they're not great. The alternatives are let the funds go bankrupt, raid the general fund, but that's really only going to buy you a couple years until the general fund is out of money. And then we'll all be back in the same position, but the general fund will be in sad shape as well.
Mr. Mayor, really quickly, but needed to clarify what you just said about bringing in 10 and spending 20. What you're referring to is in those individual funds,
Yes.
because we have not raised rates in about 10 years. We've been subsidizing that, and because we've had increased costs through water and garbage and all of that. Utilizing the reserves to cover the cost of providing the services. It's not that we're bringing in 10 and we're out here spending 20 on other things that aren't related.
No, that's correct.
Right.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, and then one other question. I know that you guys did like 4 community outreaches. Were we going to do another one during this waiting period? Because it might be helpful for these folks who missed them, who live in the older part of Lincoln, to sit down with you guys so you can walk them through the whole thing. You've done a really great job explaining, but we've heard it multiple times.
Right.
They haven't. So are we going to do another one?
We are, and we had actually planned one, and then Sean's mom passed away. Unfortunately, our city manager, Sean Scully, his mom passed away unexpectedly. Well, expectedly, but not unexpectedly. And so we are waiting for him to come back into the office to select a date, to give it enough time. We don't want to do it the day after he returns because we want to give enough time to publicize it, to push it out there, to try to get a big turnout. We're planning to do it at the library because we've noticed that when we have community meetings there, we get a bigger attendance. So we are trying to, or we will schedule that additional public meeting and really push it out to get people to come to try to provide this information in a broader forum.
And how do you guys normally advertise so they know it's coming when?
We've been pushing it out on our website. We've also been pushing it out on our social media platforms. I think that was it for the last time, is that we also push it out. I would encourage, I think Pete mentioned, doing polling within the community. I would encourage all of you to sign up for Flash Vote. That's a great tool. This is the city has recently launched, and it allows us to get a broad spectrum. We have, I think, over 1,000 people signed up for Flash Vote, which I know doesn't sound like a lot in a city of 50,000. So I would encourage everyone who is here and their friends to please sign up for Flash Vote, so that when we send out these questions, that we get that as many people from the city to respond, to tell us what it is they want. In the first flash vote that we did, the priority of the community was public safety. That's, maintaining the police and fire that we have now and growing those services. We won't be able to do that if we used general fund dollars to subsidize these funds.
Might clarify a little bit more on that whole, we didn't raise rates in 10 years because there was, I believe in 2018 where we tried to do that. And although something passed, it was not successful.
That's
Ended up
correct.
paying
Yeah, so
back.
it was success. I would correct and say it was successful. Did you have something you wanted to add, Paul, before I continue?
Our city attorney is looking very nervous because we're beginning to have a conversation here.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I would only clarify that there was a rate process in 2018 that was successful. But for decisions that I would say weren't the best decisions of city management at the time, not the city council, but city management at the time, those rates weren't implemented.
Thank you, Nita. Do you have anything further?
No, I think I'll pass it off to Matt to talk about the side roads.
Hang on.
Good evening. As a public works director, I am going to take this opportunity to speak a little bit about utility rates. We are very willing to hold another public meeting or town hall meeting. Nita, Sean, both are available for questions. If there's specific questions on the CIP, I'm more than willing to address that. One of the things that the community has done over the past 10 years is paid much less than all the surrounding areas for water, sewer, and garbage. If you compare the current rates, you can see that it's significantly less than the surrounding communities. One of the things, and how did the community afford that? The community afforded that by deferring maintenance on both the water and sewer system. The sewer system, we've only been doing spot repairs. For the water system, we've been replacing approximately 1 mile of pipeline per year. For the water system, we have approximately 250 miles of pipeline to maintain. The average life of the pipeline is about 75 years. We have, I believe, over 5 miles of pipeline that are over that 75-year threshold. And I believe within the next few years, we're going to have over 11 miles that are over that 75 years. We have 3 water storage tanks and 5 wells. All total, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $750 million worth of infrastructure. We have in the single digits millions of dollars for CIP work. So we don't have a big piggy bank to keep this system running. We need to increase the investment in CIP and rehabilitation of the system to make sure that everyone has that reliable water service. Similar for wastewater. We haven't been doing the 1 mile per year replacement. We've only been doing spot repairs. We have about 226 miles of sewer pipeline, and we have 9 lift stations that are required to get the sewage to the Lisswa treatment plant, the new JPA that was formed between the county and the city. Again, single digits, millions of dollars for reserves for pipeline replacement. So just that alone, we need to increase rates to increase that investment to make sure we have a sustainable system. What are we doing to save money? I know Pete said, where are we cutting? Well, where we're cutting is we're going to find efficiencies to make sure that with the resources we're asking for, we provide them to address the areas of the system that have the highest probability of failure and the highest consequence of failure. In the next 5 years, we're proposing to continue the 1 mile per year pipeline replacement for water when we should be around the 3 miles per year. And for wastewater, we are gonna start replacing 1 mile per year. Historically, we haven't been doing that. Where do we need to be? We need to be about 3 miles a year. In this 5-year rate study, we're not getting to 3 miles per year. In the 6th year, we are looking at, and we projected to get to 2 miles a year. So this is not a full ask. And where are we going to save money? Where we're going to save money is we're doing a water master plan over the next 2 years. And in the next budget cycle, the 25-27, we're doing a sewer master plan. At the same time, we have a phenomenal information technology officer Jennifer Brown. She's going to get us, I believe this budget year, an asset management plan or software application, which we haven't had in the past. We're going to do a full condition assessment of all the water and sewer infrastructure and then project out a plan to best allocate the resources we are asking for. So how are we going to save you guys money? We're going to smartly invest the money that we are asking for. But right now we don't have money to invest. And that's not a place you want to be. We don't want to be in a place where there's continued deferred maintenance because emergency repairs are more than double planned and competitively bid repairs. We just had a 40-mile piece of storm drain pipe, and we're not talking about storm drain tonight, but just that 40-foot emergency repair was $200,000. Now project that times 250 miles. It's completely infeasible. So one of the things we're going to do to save this community money is take the limited resources we're asking for and prepare a full asset management plan for about 100 years. And then we are going to continuously update that with real-time condition assessment and leak information. So that's what we're going to do. So we're not asking a full ask. We're not doubling your rates because we like it. We don't like high bills more than anybody else. We're trying to keep them low. And what we're going to do is we're going to invest that money wisely. That's what we're going to do. And how did we determine where we set the ask? We looked at what does everyone else pay in the area? And we made sure we were in that ballpark, because if we did a full ask to make up for all the
I
deferred
just wanted
maintenance.
to interrupt you, Matt. So we didn't use other agencies to set our rates. I don't want to
Yeah,
get that
I'm
impression.
sorry.
And the city attorney is over here kicking me under the table that we're
Sorry.
talking too much.
Okay,
So if you
I'm
could go
sorry.
back to addressing the crack ceiling question before she
And-
gives me her bruise.
Yeah, and the crack ceiling question and how that's related to the utility rates. We had 26 water leak repairs last year. A lot of our pavement maintenance goes to those collateral impacts of those utility emergency rate repairs. But for our crack seal program this year, the full budget is addressing one village of, I believe, 132 villages in Sun City. And that's, I believe, 2 to 3 weeks worth of work and somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 in crack seal. So as you can imagine, if you project that out, the magnitude of the required crack seal in the city. So one of the things we're looking at, and again, it's tied to utilities, is a utility cut impact fee that would be for all the utilities, communications. That would be a small assessment so that we could have a little bit of extra funding to do these high priority maintenance jobs. So we do have a pavement management program. I know a list of streets was adopted, I believe, in May, but I'm definitely available if you have more questions on road maintenance. There's a lot of work to do and there's very limited funding. So again, we have to be very strategic in how we apply that. But if you're looking at your court, definitely talk to us. We know there's a lot of needs citywide, and we'll do the best we can to apply those dollars to the most effective use possible.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. And council, just as a reminder, and also just to perhaps educate the public a little bit about the Brown Act and the restrictions that we are under. The Brown Act specifically limits the amount of time and conversation that can be had on items that are not on the agenda, which we've been talking now for almost 50 minutes. That is outside the area of what I am comfortable with describing as brief comment. So I would, again, just let the public know this is in no way our intention to try to limit your ability to comment or to have your voices be heard. It's just that this is not the appropriate forum at this time because of the restrictions we're under California law that do not apply to the state legislature. And so that's where we
So
are.
there'll be at least one more workshop where everyone can ask their questions. They'll all be addressed.
And then a public hearing.
And a public hearing back here that will be agendized, and then we can have that conversation. So we've gone ahead and we've closed the public comments section. Many of us will stick around after the meeting. It's hopefully a fairly short meeting. If you've got some questions that we can address tonight, I think we'd be happy to do that as well. So we've closed the public comment section. We can ask questions at the workshop, or we can ask questions when this gets agendized. We can explain.
I
Christine,
would be
you like-
more than happy. I've given several public presentations on it. There's actually a recorded presentation on the city's website. So if you'd like to reach out to me, I'd be happy to talk to you about the Brown Act. I can, under the California Government Code, City Council is not allowed to speak more than to briefly comment on items that are not agendized. And this is not an item that is on the agenda at this time.
Not right now, no, sir. And the reason for the Brown Act doing that is there are folks who won't know that this conversation is being had because it wasn't agendized. They might have wanted to be here to hear this or come online to hear this, but because it was not agendized, they didn't have that opportunity. That's why we do this. That's why the Brown Act exists. So we're going to go ahead and move forward at this point to our consent agenda. I've had a request for a question on one item, and then we'll go ahead and see if there's any member of the public that wishes to pull an item. No member of the council wishes to pull an item.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question posed by a resident who couldn't be here. And so I kind of already explained it, but just for clarification for the public. Item 8C, the expansion of the IT room for the police station. The question is, we've been talking, and it's part of our strategic plan to build a new police station a few years down the road. And the question was, is it wise to invest all this money into this new room for you when we're going to build another one? And are we wasting that money? Could we recoup the money when we sell the building? And I'm gonna let you answer, but my response was, well, the new building is not for a few years down the road and we need it now. So, but go ahead and respond to that, Chief. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We have immediate needs that we have intentionally ignored for quite some time in hopes that we would be in a building in the near future. That is, I couldn't tell you how many years out we are on that. So we are at a point where we need to continue to invest. We're doing it as economically feasible as possible and not going beyond what we need to spend. And it kills me to be spending any money in the building, but that's just our reality and we still need to exist. So it's unfortunately has to happen.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And certain of these items are under state mandate, under recently passed laws.
Well, and I think when I explained it, that there was comfort with that. I just wanted to bring it out and have it answered. Thank you.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to have council pull an item for discussion tonight? Mr. Chapman?
Once again, Byron Chapman, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, probably based on my ignorance, 8D. And basically my only question was, and I couldn't find it, I was trying to figure out where Magnolia was at, what that project is for. And I couldn't find it. So if I get clarification on it, that's what I need. Thanks.
Thank you, Byron. Anyone else wish to have the council pull an item for discussion? Anyone online, Gwen? All right. You know what? Why don't we go ahead and just answer that question, and then we'll take the consent agenda in its entirety. Does that work?
I'm going to push that to Travis.
Yeah, Magnolia Village is at the corner of 4th and Joyner.
That do, Byron? Okay. With that, if there is nothing further from the council, I'll go ahead and accept a motion on the entirety of the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion, Andriotta, second Brown. Gwen, roll
Yes.
call, please.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skip,
Yep.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. We'll move on to public hearings. We have none this evening. On to general business. Item 10A, adopt resolution 2023-126, approving the salary schedule for the recently approved police captain and fire deputy chief classifications. Chief Alves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This will be a brief procedural item. A police captain and a fire deputy chief position were approved in the 23-25 budget and as required by the city's municipal code and CalPERS regulations. The salary schedule for this classification must be approved by city council. The proposed salary schedule was included in your packet, and it is the same as for other at-will contracted employees, which these two positions would be. So with that, it is in line with the other positions that we have in the city, and I would be welcome to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the council? Chief, do you anticipate filling these positions anytime soon?
The sooner the better, as soon as I can get a meeting with the city manager to finalize the job descriptions, we'll be ready to go.
Thank you. Any member of the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none in chambers. Gwen, anyone on? Oh, Pete? Come up to the podium if you would, please.
I don't know if I heard right, but did he say that they approved the pay schedule
The pay schedule will be approved.
for,
This item.
okay, what is that? How much does that job pay?
The salary schedule for these positions and all other at-will contracted positions in the city, the range is 99,967 and change up to 275,000. It's within that range somewhere.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone else? No one online. All right, we'll bring it back up here for questions or discussion. Seeing none, I'll accept a motion on the item.
I'll move to adopt resolution 2023-126, approving salary schedules for recently approved police captain and fire deputy chief classifications.
A second.
Motion Brown, second Andreata. Gwen, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
We move into our reports section. Nita, you're sitting in for the city manager. Do you have any city manager's report?
No report this evening, Mr. Mayor.
All right, council initiated business. Is there any council initiated business tonight?
No business.
No business? All right. Council committee reports. No?
I want to report that as I said 2 weeks ago, we're actually liaising with our elected officials, both at the state and federal level, and we've had some success. Congressman Kiley has actually got an entry into the defense appropriation bill. I don't want to go through I don't want to read the whole thing, but it notes that 87% of the contaminated formerly used defense sites are in the complete stage. However, it urges the committee to look at the remaining sites, including the Lincoln Titan I missile site complex, with all deliberate speed, in the interest of transparency, and to share the results and any remediation recommendations with the public. So we are, making progress there. Also, last Thursday, KCRA opened up the 6 o'clock report with a report on our Titan site, and they spent about 10 minutes on it. So it was, we're getting some progress, and we're continuing to look at talking to other members of federal and state legislatures, including our 2 senators. So things are moving along.
Very good. Thank you, Bill. And did you have anything? I've got a couple very quickly. We finally were able to reinstitute the 2x2x2 meetings, which are the city manager from Roseville, Rockland, Lincoln. This time around, it was the mayor only. Our tradition has been mayors and vice mayors for continuity's sake, since we rotate so frequently, and we'll do that again. So we'll be meeting again in September. Without going into great detail, the topics between our 3 cities were an early discussion of alternatives to PG&E for the region, how we might possibly move on to another provider, what's entailed in that, and who would be willing partners in that effort. There was a pretty robust conversation about waste management. So Dan, you and I are going to have to talk offline. Roseville, given the conditions of SB 1383, are very concerned that I call it WAPMA, but I guess I have to, that WAPMA doesn't have appropriate plans in place in the eventuality that the landfill is, or the MRF is audited and forced to go to a clean MRF. And they've got great concerns about that. And I think that Rockland is a little worried about it as well. So that will remain high on our list. And Dan, I'd like very much to talk with you offline to get your sense of that. There was a discussion of homelessness and the regional approach to that. And apparently the grand jury is requiring that there be a regional plan in place. I think that we're going to be able to take what we've been doing the last year and a half, 2 years, pull that into some type of report that we can all throw our logos on and put forward. All right. Beyond that, I attended the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. The largest item actually was really intended to be a receive and file. It was a feasibility study done as a result of a lawsuit against PCTPA. And that study was checking the feasibility of passenger rail from Lincoln, connecting to Roseville and beyond. I think that the belief was that the report was simply going to come back and say, yeah, it's too expensive. It's not possible. UP will never go along. It's done. And as the settlement of the lawsuit, they would just move on. However, within the presentation, it became clear that there is existing capacity within the UP lines, and it is, however improbable, feasible. So we wound up in a 45-minute conversation about how do we look into this farther? How do we have a conversation with UP? Lincoln had passenger rail for 100 years. Why did it work then? Why won't it work now? And so those early conversations, I think, are taking place. I also attended the CalCog board meeting, at which the only item was their budget approval. So that completes my list. Our last item is information items.
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
I just want to remind the council that on July 21st, the Sac Valley Division of League of California Cities meeting will be hosted here in Lincoln. They're going to come, so far we have 15 or so signed up. They're going to do a tour of Gladding McBean at 11. And then the meeting will be at the Women's Club, Wannerati's Catering, and we'll have several speakers. The president of the league is going to be there to give some comments, as well as Assembly Member Joe Patterson, who's going to speak on his fentanyl bills. And so looking forward to being a really great meeting. So if you haven't, and if you're able, please have Jen register you so that we put you in the account. I'm really looking forward to hosting and showing off Lincoln. I've been busy putting together little bags for each attendee, showcasing Lincoln businesses and products and things in Placer County. So looking forward to it.
Very good. Sounds good. Thank you. And the date and time on that again?
It's July
was?
21st and the tour starts at 11 and then the meeting is at 12:30.
So that's a very rare opportunity, folks, to get in and take a tour of Gladding. That's been very difficult to do the last several years. It'll be a small group, but
Yeah.
each of you or staff. All right. Anyone else have an information item?
Yeah, we had a very successful 4th of July parade.
Oh,
you know,
thank you.
and people really enjoyed it. I mean, it was really good. I walked the entire route, so I was right at street level. And people had a lot of fun. People were very interested, you know, so we did a good job this
Yeah,
year.
I agree with that. There's a moment in the parade where you turn the corner and you see the crowd lining the street all the way up. And typically, that's been about 5,000 people, and that's very impressive. This time, the number was somewhere between 10 and 15,000, spread out much further across the city and truly remarkable. And it went so smoothly.
It was.
It's kudos to the chamber for pulling that off.
And then the 4th of July Foundation activities in the park and then the fireworks. I actually spoke to several people that there was somebody here, family from Dallas, from London, from St. Louis. People come from all over to visit family here, and it's kind of been their tradition. So we had people from all over the country in Lincoln on the 4th of July. It was a great success.
Yeah, wonderful. So Chief, I'm going to follow up on that and put you on the spot a little bit. I'm sure my fellow council members have gotten this as well. I've gotten deluged with questions about illegal fireworks and what are we doing about them?
Gets worse every year.
It does.
There are so many calls for service for that. We try to get to them. If we see it occurring, it is a misdemeanor, so it needs to be committed in our presence for us to be able to act on it. If it is committed in our presence and we do act on it, we seize them, issue citations. I don't know what our stats were for this year, but typically you get 1 or 2, honestly, just because we can't sneak up very well. So, when a police car is coming down the street and everyone runs inside or hides everything. So yes, it is a problem. It is just, every year, it just seems to get worse. So.
And not just here.
Right.
What about video? I mean, if we're someone to record it, even though it wasn't in your presence, does it have to be in your presence or?
There can be, you can issue a citizen's arrest. So if a citizen saw somebody do it and they can positively identify them and are willing to testify in court as to what they saw, then we can issue a citizen's arrest citation that way. But it's call to call all night long. And typically there's just so much traffic all night and we need to drive slow because there's so many people out. It takes us 15, 20, an hour or 2 to get to some of these calls because we're stacked so deep that night. So just catching them in the act is not easy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, in a situation like that, fire also has powers of arrest?
To some extent, if we were set up correctly, we were at one point heading down that path to be able to do that. And that just isn't something that we've utilized for quite some time. I think we did a bit of a pilot many years ago, but we can look back into that, sure.
Been around a while. That's probably
Oh,
what I
yeah.
remember. Thank you, Chief. I
Yes.
appreciate it. Any other information items from the council?
Not so much information. I wanted to say how appreciative I was, how much I really appreciate the public coming out to these meetings and, without engagement, we can't, help get people the information both ways, both us and to them, so that we're all on the same team, on the same page. We want to
And the
accomplish the
Brown
same
Act
thing.
makes this difficult.
Yeah. But we'll be here to answer questions after the meeting, and so. Thanks for sticking around.
And Mayor, I just wanted to give a real quick update if I can on our homelessness task force and things that we have going on. So first of all, if you've driven down by the United States Postal Service, you'll see that split rail fence is down and the iron fence will be going in. So I didn't want to not mention that because maybe Ms. Veltra is listening online and I know that that's a very important project to her and her homeowners association. At the next regular city council meeting, we will be rolling out a workshop item for a new proposed camping ordinance. So I'll be asking for some direction from you as to how you would like to see it structured in compliance with Martin versus Boise and Johnson versus Grants Pass. We also will be rolling out the long-awaited pilot project that we've made some significant strides on in the last week or so. So we'll hopefully have something for you to at least give us some direction so that we can really flesh it out and move forward with that. And then last but not least, we have a new collaborative effort with not only probation, but we had a Rockland police officer out there today, my 2 code enforcement officers. And we are starting to do more regular walks of the creek and the ravine. There were, I think, 3 or 4 arrests today. There was 1 woman taken to the hospital. And there were a number of citations given out for various, statutes, arrests related to warrants. We're trying to get someone from Fish and Wildlife to come and walk the creek with us as well. But we're making significant strides. We also, code enforcement in the last 2 weeks, working with the private property owner out at Turtle Bend, was able to successfully get those individuals removed from that property. And then the property owner has since dug a very deep trench and then taken that dirt and made it a large berm so that it's not possible to get private vehicles into that area, which had been a significant concern to all of the new development and residents that are over in that area. So we're making strides. It's the stick in the carrot approach in a lot of ways, but we're trying to make sure that we can respond to not only the needs of our homeless population, but also the very significant needs and concerns of our residents and business community.
That's all good news, Christine. Thank you. I think you also are discussing posting the area under the Joyner overcrossing. There's no parking.
Correct. We will be posting the area under Joyner Parkway on Lincoln Boulevard as no parking because we've noticed that some of the homeless use that area to park in their vehicles and sleep overnight and create some issues. So
We've seen that as well. All right, thank you for that update. If there is nothing further, we stand adjourned.
Thank you, staff.